The doors at 21st and Potter Street may be closed forever, but St. James High School lives on for those of us who entered as boys and left as young men. Mr. Mooney taught thousands of young men how to do the right thing. That wasn't easy. We all know that a building filled with that much testosterone had to spell trouble. After all, a bulldog will bark, a bulldog will bite. Hell, there are times a bulldog may even piss on the rug. But Mr. Mooney gave us the humility to recognize our mistakes. He gave us the intelligence and space to learn from our failures. And he gave us the class to celebrate our victories with grace. Here's to the heart and soul of St. James High School, Mr. John Mooney.
His biggest influence on me was as a teacher. When I entered St. James as a freshman, I was a poor reader, and I had him for developmental reading as a freshman. Because of his influence in that class, I became a much better reader. My vocabulary improved. He was probably the best teacher I ever had in that one freshman year class.
He not only taught English, he was an assistant principal, he was a head baseball coach, and actually even coached other sports. Just the ability for him to come to practically every Friday night dance and monitor and supervise those dances was unbelievable.
I mean, he was there proctoring and kind of controlling and managing as best he could these, raucous teenagers. It was raining and some of the guys were misbehaving and they were in and out of the place trying to, get out the doors, emergency doors. And I remember him standing at the top and saying, either ingress or egress from the precipitation. And all they got was blank stares back there. I had no idea what he was saying. And it was that moment when I knew that I would love the English language.
In the classroom, he gave me a love of language that was a major contribution to my career as a teacher and more recently as a writer.
He didn't dumb down anything for the students. He made sure that he spoke as an adult and, for the best part, pretended we were adults.
It's really about how you live your life, how you carry yourself from day to day. You couldn't have John Mooney as a teacher and not walk away a better person. Just not possible.
I went to him thinking that, okay, maybe I could be a writer, maybe I could be a baseball player, but I ended up being a nerd, and I thank him for that, that was more important than anything else that he taught me.
I've always said that good teachers teach, but great teachers inspire. Mr. Mooney was a great teacher because he didn't just inspire me, he inspired hundreds, if not thousands of guys and helped us find our way, and he certainly did with me.
I never had a coach that was so organized. Every practice, he had every player on task. We did a host of different things, all kinds of different drills, and we were well prepared for every game.
Everything he ever did was written out. We would run from St. James through Chester Park, all the way through the park, down through Upland, till we got to the field down in Upland. And we used to run that every day before practice.
You didn't touch a baseball for 2 weeks. You watched movies, you ran Chester Park, you watched more movies, and then finally you got out onto the field. That was baseball for Mr. Mooney.
But he threw all the press clippings in the trash. He didn't care about your legacy. My father pitched professionally for the Phillies. He didn't care about any of that. Larry Files' dad played with the Phillies. His thing was how you executed for St. James baseball. And he drilled and drilled and drilled and drilled. And we were the best conditioned baseball team in the area, by far.
I can remember us many days, Saturdays when we really didn't want to practice, going down to Chester Park and over to Crozier Field and working on pitchers' fielding practice and rundowns and bunts, which are the most boring things to do when you're practicing baseball. Everybody wants a hit.
He is at the very top of all of the coaches and leaders that I've encountered.
We all thought we knew how to slide. He taught us how to slide. He had that carpet or the blanket that he used to throw on the floor, and here he comes running down and jumps on it and slides and teaches you how to slide. You know, we all thought we knew how to slide. We didn't.
His structure was just fundamentally solid. He just kept it real simple, never made it complex for us, and made it easy for us to play baseball. But to say that Mr. Mooney was just a baseball coach would be a dramatic understatement.
We'd be getting ready for practice, either getting a bus to go down to Memorial Park or go down to St. Robert's Field. He'd be cutting the grass as we were getting ready for practice. So then the lawnmower would go away and the practice would begin.
Joe Grace is another baseball player who actually made the bigs for a little bit. Said that he took the manual, and you probably remember the manual we got on March 1st. Well, Joe Grace grabbed a copy of that and actually took it to his professional coach, and I think it was LaRussa that he gave it to, and he spread it around the minors.
I remember one time we were sitting on a bench and we were getting ready to do fielding, and he said, we're going to work on our perspicacity, and he walked over to get a fungo bat, and everybody looked at each other and said, what the hell is he talking about?
And he used to drive me home, but he lived at the end of the street and I lived all the way down the other end. And if I was going to be playing in a baseball game that next day, he would drive me all the way down. If we weren't, he made me walk all the way home. He never yells at anybody, he never curses at anybody, but you know when he's mad at you.
I remember he had a little piece of paper at third base in his pocket, and I'm telling you, it was 1 by 1.5. If you were batting or defense, he would pull it out and write down if you did something well or maybe you did something that was not so well, right? You could see him writing it down and slipping it back in his pocket. I don't know how he got so much information on a 1 by 1.5 piece of paper.
You know, if you made a mistake on the field, you would look over to Mr. Mooney and think, oh, don't you pull out that notebook. And then you would see him slowly take that out and start writing something down. So at that point it was cringe, like, oh no, I'm gonna get in trouble. But you know, you think back, right? And it was all life lesson. And he wasn't trying to berate anybody on the field. This was something that he was going to do later.
He was almost like a father figure to me. I was, you know, got myself in trouble now and again, and he was the real disciplined guy, but for whatever reason, he really took me under his wing. You know, he had faith in me like not many teachers did, and from a baseball perspective, really had a lot of faith in me. And it got to the point where, you know, you made sure that you did your best to do the right thing.
I have a very vivid memory of the night that they won the city championship in baseball at Connie Mack Stadium. The last inning, when the St. James team was coming off the field after they had retired Lincoln in the 8th, so they had one more inning to go. I remember Mr. Mooney, who wasn't a tremendously emotional kind of guy, but I remember him standing in front of the dugout as the team came off the field and going like this, one more inning, one more. And I thought, that is really cool. Knowing they were that close to that moment and you know how much he wanted it, not for him, but for the team and for the school and what it meant in the bigger picture. I mean, he got all of that, and it was in that gesture. I always remember that. And of course, they retired the side in the 9th, and they had won the city championship, and the great celebration took place. But the thing that I remember is John standing in front of the dugout and went, one more, just one more.
He is St. James. He's St. James to, my father was a graduate, I was a graduate, I have cousins and uncles and everything they've gone through, and he's the first personification of what you want to talk about for the school at 21st and Potter and then in here.
He always chose his words carefully, and some of his words to this day I don't quite understand. However, he was always a true gentleman. He's been a true gentleman for us for years and years and years.
He gave all of us the belief that we could do anything that we wanted to do. I would take any challenge and I could do it.
I consider him more of a mentor and a teacher and a role model. I think of all the times in the last 50 years that I've thought of him. I think it's important that we try to remember that there are people like Coach Mooney that were needed back in those time frames. Certainly in today's time frames, we could use a lot more Coach Mooneys.
He gets out of bed in the morning every day and puts the doggies on the deck and goes to work doing something. The guy is a teacher, the guy is a coach, the guy's a psychiatrist, the guy is a motivator, and more than anything, I think, the guy leads by example. He doesn't just talk the talk.
The best thing I can tell you is when I got wounded in Vietnam, he wrote a letter to me. I got hit in February after the first hit. I had 2 Bronze Stars and a Purple Heart. Somehow he found out, and the only people I had letters from was my mom, dad, and my sister and brother. When I got out of the Army, I had nothing to do. I was in the post office and I quit. That wasn't a very happy time for me. Coming back from Vietnam, you didn't feel like a whole lot. I started trying to play golf, and then I ended up playing golf, you know, being a golfer, and Mr. Mooney got a hold of me and he wished me well and everything. He says, "Tell him your story." I said, "Mr. Mooney, it's not my story, it's your story. It's Mr. Mooney's story."
There aren't words to describe and commend him enough. You know, what he gave back to us, we could never give back to him enough.
You look around at this place, right? This is St. James, but this is really Mr. Mooney. The way he just elevated this alumni association and the way he elevated the spirit of St. James, it'll live on forever, or at least, you know, until we all go.
I think it was 2 years ago, he said, "You know, I'm a lucky person." He says, "My career was based on 16, 17, 18-year-olds and never let me down." So I would hope that through this event that he realizes that there's a lot of former 16, 17, and 18-year-olds who he influenced throughout their lives. And we're thankful for what he did for us.
So the life lessons is that, you know, you really need to believe in yourself. When there's guys like that have that much faith in you, it gives you confidence that, you know what, as accomplished as he is, if he thinks I'm that, I need to be that.
Thank you, Mr. Mooney. On behalf of myself, all of the teammates that I had before, the years that I was with, and the years after, we can't thank you enough. And I want to impart that and make sure that he and his family understand that the legacy and the appreciation that we have for a man that, you know, is one of a kind.
Everything that St. James was meant to be, everything everybody hoped it would be, everything that you tried to make it on a daily basis, John represented all of that. He was the best of it. He was the best of it then, and he's the best of it today.